Already opened meeting to order, colleagues. There's no public forum, but we do have apologies from Councillor Hall and Mr Ellison, and also from Councillor Van der Vis for possibly an early departure, although how we'd still be going in half an hour would be a bit beyond me, but we can all be surprised. I'll move that we accept those apologies. Seconded by Councillor Walker. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. That's agreed. I'll move that the committee confirms the agenda without addition or alteration. Seconded by Councillor Barker, fresh from Air New Zealand's tender clutches. Any discussion? No. Those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. That's agreed. And I'll remind members of the need to stand aside from decision making if there's any conflict within their roles. I'll move that. Are there any changes to the elected members? Are there any changes to the elected members' register of interest? Yes, Councillor Elder.
Just informing and
Could you use your microphone, please?
South Dunedin Street Art Murals project.
Okay, that's fine. Did you do that for the other meeting? I didn't hear.
I was late for the other meeting, so.
Right. With what that change included, I'll move that we confirm that schedule. Seconded by Councillor Walker. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. That's agreed. And that takes us to the confirmation of minutes. I'll move that we confirm the public part of the minutes of the meeting of April 4 and also the public part of the extraordinary meeting of 14 April. I have a seconder, Councillor Lord. Any discussion? Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. That's agreed. Item 6, the actions from resolutions of Planning and Environment Committee meetings. Any matters that people wish to raise? Appearing to be none, I'll move that we note that paper. Councillor Walker seconds. Discussion. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. And item 7, the Planning and Environment Committee Forward Work Programme. Ms Boudica is available for... Where is she?
She's not here.
Oh, who's being shown? It'll be Mr West. Any questions of Mr West? Councillor Gary.
Oh, thank you, Mr Chair. And I had a question from page 34. The Otago Boat Harbour Reserve Management Plan and Otago Harbour Reserve Management Plan, scheduled for August 2022. It talks about key stakeholders here in terms of the work. Can you speak to what's the scope of that particular piece of work and the timing more precisely of the stakeholder group? Because there was a commitment some time ago of a wider stakeholder group on that piece of work. And I'm sorry, I've just got the document, which is quite long, and haven't had a chance to look at it particularly carefully.
Yes, apologies. That the 2006 Reserve Management Plan for Otago Harbour was circulated this morning, further to a question from Ms Wesley, so that was just as background. Apologies, I'm not clear on the timeline for that report or the scope. Mr Pickford may be able to answer that question. I think he's on Zoom, and he may be able to answer that question for us.
I'm sorry that the sound was a bit muddled, but from what I understood of the question, so there are two reserve management plans that are in that stream of work. There's the Otago Harbour Reserve Management Plan, which is the July 2006 piece of work. And that's about 14 harbour reserves where they provide the principal access to the harbour, and then there's a separate one, which is the Otago Boat Harbour Recreation Reserve, which is the April 2005 piece of work, which is that specific reserve on Magnet Street near the mouth of the water of the Leak. So those pieces of work are a joint piece of work starting in August and the team are just starting the initial work around that. But I don't have an end date for you, unfortunately, but I can talk to the team, see if we can provide more detail. But that's all we have at this stage. The bit of proceedings, it talks about the Otago Harbour Reserve Management Plan, but it should have an S on reserves because we're 14 of them.
And may I ask a subsequent question, Mr. Chair? So, Mr. Pickford, we've been doing quite a lot of work as an organisation around the harbour edge through our Parks and Reserves team. What plan have they been working to? Has there been a plan? Because this one's quite out of date.
So they're working to those existing reserve management plans, as I understand, and that, as you say, they're long overdue for a review, and hence this piece of work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. On that matter, I want to thank Ms. Wesley for her thoroughness or curiosity, or both of those, in asking the question about those documents. I think the magnitude of that document and what's traversed shows that the size of this piece of work and the fact that overdue and all as it is, it really is time that we got on with it, and there will be a very large number of parties who will want to be involved. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. One's on the Waterfront Bridge report, and I just wanted to check if that was July 2023 as in when the report's due. Is it July 2022 when the report's due?
That would appear to be the case, yes.
Okay, so we can speak that soon. Thank you. And my next one was just about two consultations. There's the Signal Hill Reserve Management Plan and the Botanic Garden Management Plan, and I see that they've got developments of their strategic plan, and I was curious as to when they might be going out to consultation because they have a high degree of public interest.
So again, I will refer to Mr. Pickford because he'll have much more information on those two than I will.
Those specific details, we can get that information to you after this meeting.
That would be helpful, thank you. Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go back to the Otago harbour plans and ask, is there anything for Karatani? Because I'm just conscious that when Silver Peaks handed over stuff, a lot of stuff didn't get handed over. So is there anything for Karatani?
I'll answer that specifically. We can get back to you after this meeting about that question.
Councillor Redden.
Yes. Two things. Firstly, the Aurora Energy Transformer, page 30. Is that the one that we were talking about at the earlier committee meeting?
It's not if it's the one in George Street. This is the one on the hospital site.
Right. Yes, it doesn't say the street, so it's okay. And the Centres project, maybe I missed it, but did we get a report at the May 23 May annual plan deliberations on the citywide amenities and transport upgrade program?
I think that is scheduled for May 23. Yep, May 23 Council.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, thank you.
Further questions? There are none. I will move that we note that update report. Seconded by Councillor Stones. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. That's agreed. And that takes us to item 8, the Planning Environment Activity Report to the 31st. Ms. Austin and team? We're doing it. Yeah. We're doing it by what bit, are we? Right. Community and planning. Do you have any introductory comments, Ms. Austin or anyone else?
Happy to take as read, answer questions.
Any questions of the first section, the community and planning section? Councillor Vandervis.
When you say the first section, does this relate to page 38 as well? On page 38, item 4, it says, design proposals across the city have been informed by stakeholder and community consultation. How can this be an accurate statement when the vast majority of 172 annual plan submissions opposed the George Street upgrade, and the biggest petition this century had 6,500 signatories also opposing it? How can you then say that the proposals were informed by stakeholder and community consultation?
Mr. Drew.
So, Councillor, staff have just enacted Council's decision of an earlier planning environment meeting to proceed with the design on George Street at One Way. When we got to that point, we've been working with a number of stakeholders, including mana whenua, fire and emergency, local businesses, so it's a reflection of the project after council decisions.
So the community consultation that took place at the annual plan and the petition were not on your radar when you wrote this?
No, all of the community feedback has been considered and presented to council for decisions at decision points and reflected in the designs that we have before us.
Did that also include all but one of the community boards who were also opposed?
I'm not aware of specific community board engagement.
Going back to the annual plan. But thank you for answering the question.
Further questions, councillors? Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's to points 5 through 8, which is the future development strategy and the growth infrastructure policy. I know that there's keen interest on the Waikawa coast about the strategy, as it has implications of where population growth may occur if we are to grow. And I know that particular community board asked to be involved. What is the method by which you will be using community boards and other community groups?
Through the Chair, yes, the Waikawa Community Board reiterated that desire to be involved in the process through their submission on the annual plan, and our response was that it is the future development strategy and consultation through that process which is the appropriate thing to do. As you'll be aware, the future development strategy is a collaborative effort with the Regional Council and mana whenua. They've only just had their inaugural steering group meeting in the last week or so. That group will have to determine who they consult with and how, but it's intended that they will consult directly with parties that show an interest in the matter, but the details aren't there yet.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got questions about the resource consents, but just on the FDS, in my head, I've got there's a statutory time by which all TAs in New Zealand have to complete this. Just remind.
That's correct. The National Policy Statement on Urban Development requires a future development strategy to be prepared by certain tier local authorities. It has to be lined up to inform the infrastructure strategy, which is a necessary document for, I think, the long-term plan. So that creates a time frame within which it must be done.
I'll just add that there's a workshop with councillors on the 25th of May. They'll set out a little bit more detail about how we progress with the future development strategy.
Okay, thank you. And on to we often ask questions around timeframes and numbers around resource consent. Aren't we on resource consents as well?
No, we're still on community and planning.
It's in this part, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, this comes up often, and I think we've got, 84%. And this, and my question is informed by yet another message I had this morning. It's around, and this is actually from somebody quite trusted and quite smart. And he says he just laughs at that figure, and we have a trick. And the trick he's talking about is the fact that the clock is, that time, it's switched off and it's switched on. And he's giving an example of something that in reality took about 5 months.
Councillor, you're talking about building consents
Yeah.
with the clock. This is resource consents.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about resource consents, actually.
Yeah, no, they're separate. They're two different
isn't it?
things. Yeah.
Okay, I'm on page 41. Am I way ahead?
All right.
Pardon? So you're talking about stopping the clock.
Yeah, exactly. It's a question about stopping the clock.
Stopping
And
the clock in reference to building consents.
resource consents.
Resource consents.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
okay. That's set by the Act. The requirements of stopping the clock. Set
Okay, so
by
my
the Act.
question
Yeah.
my question was around the perception we give and how we can better communicate
Yes.
that stopping of the clock.
Yes.
That's the question.
So we've actually got there's a piece of work I have actually with me already, that one strategy is we are going to have a meeting with the editor of the ODT around information, but we have also a whole round of public education and key messages already prepared to go. So, and that involves the issue around stopping the clock, what we're required to do. We're also, part of that also goes to the building consent side too, is actually advertising currently some educational roles, so that we're actually taking a proactive approach. So not only are we bringing in more staff and streamlining and making those improvements, we're also looking at ways we can work with our stakeholders in terms of improving understanding and also improving the completeness of applications when we receive them.
So not only was that a timely question, and I think you've touched on the second one, it was just going to be around recruitment, because we've been made aware before we're short there. Just
Yes.
Where do we sit?
So at the moment we've got 4 new people just started and being trained, and 2 staff have actually been having surgery return. So we've now, our capacity has gone up by 6 people, and so we're looking at being within our timeframes in mid-June.
And presumably COVID has had some sort of effect.
Yes, yeah, and also the exponential growth. I think we've had a 30% growth building in the city, and that's a record. That's a 30%. Yeah.
Councillor Raddick.
Thank you. Do requests for information apply similarly to resource consent applications as they do to building consent applications?
They vary, councillor, because it depends. A lot of the resource consent application process is actually set much more rigidly by the Act, but the Building Act, which has actually over 400 clauses, is also set. So they're different, but a lot of it's set by the legislation. That's part of those requirements aren't stuff that's coming from the staff. It's actually come from the requirements of legislation in order to accept applications. So that's where we think the educational role can play a part, so that we can provide more information and they understand what's required. Because at the moment we're talking about 70% are complete when we receive them.
That's great. So, but RFIs are something, if people submitting incomplete applications are something that holds up.
Yes, it is. And obviously the more education, the more people understand, the quicker it will be and the less money it will cost.
Yes. So is it possible for us to have a graph showing the number of RFIs per year?
Yes.
Just like these?
Yes.
Okay, so would you be able to include that next time?
Yes, really.
Great.
Be happy to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. That'd be, I think that would show just what the situation is.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not going to show timeframes, but just it'll give a number.
Yeah, we can track that.
Thank you very
much. In fact, we are, because we have to operationally.
Okay.
Yes.
Councillor Elba.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And Steve sort of asked my question that was around workshops, and I hear we're having a workshop coming up. Would there be status reports on this work, given it's a huge piece of work ongoing on this work? And the other question is, with regards to the accelerated infrastructure project that we're voting on, will that inform that work as well?
So there will be reporting through this committee on the progress of the future development strategy, and how that reporting looks, we'll work through with councillors. And yes, part of this morning's paper on Three Waters funding was to accelerate the investment planning, which wasn't lining up with the future development strategy program that Mr. Freeland talked about, is trying to compress 4 years worth of work into 2. But that will be a challenge.
Yes, thank you very much. That's good to hear.
Councillor Geary.
Can you just clarify, Mr. Chair, are we into regulatory now? Because we seem to have overlapped.
No, wait till we've got this one done.
Okay.
Further questions about the first part of the report? Appear to be none. Let's go on then to regulatory services. Your question.
Thank you. And I wanted to just ask a question around page 48, item 12, and it was around those high numbers of incomplete applications, and I was quite shocked to see it was 70%. What do you think the reason for that is, Ms. Austin? Yeah. No, high number that are incomplete. Yeah.
Well, it's a very complex process to navigate, and there appears to be quite a bit of confusion as to what the council imposes and what's actually mostly imposed by legislation. So that's part of the educational process. But I think also this is only personal observation, but because of the high volume, the anecdotal feedback I get is that sometimes, the anecdotal feedback I get is sometimes that some applications may be rushed, or there'll be a lack of understanding just because of the pressure and volumes and turnover. So part of the role of the building consent team and the more proactive approach is the education role, but also we meet regularly with the key industry stakeholders, but we've also been working with them to look at ways where we can improve the information we provide at the first point. And also, I guess, treating the building services team acting like navigators, because in fact that's really what they are. Yeah.
So it's a different approach you're using, and being proactive is part of that, obviously.
Yes.
And what insights do you have at this time from those industry people?
So the insights we have is there's some things we could be clearer on in terms of how we communicate. So you'll see by the report that provided that one of the key pieces of work we're also doing is plain English communication, which is we're going through all our letters, all our applications, and obviously that goes beyond just building services in terms of the website as well. So it's looking at methods by which we can explain to people in the simplest language possible, rather than technical language that confounds.
And do you test that with people in the industry?
Yes, so we have been working, in fact we've had, one builder's been actually working very closely with us on that, and but part of that whole program having that senior educational role, so we'll have an education and relationships officer and another officer who are going to be that's going to be really quality improvement, and education and communication is going to be their primary responsibilities.
Thank you. And so my next question is, in terms of the team,
yes,
how do you ensure, because there's things that change all the time, isn't it?
Yes,
it's hard enough for the people in the community and industry to keep up, but how does the team, in terms of professional development, how do you ensure that consistency of application through the team?
I could put my hand on heart and say that the team are very committed to really good onboarding and ongoing professional education and updates. So that's something, obviously, given that they're also BCA, so as part of that and their accreditation requirements, they have to maintain that, and that's audited. And they recently were audited late last year.
And my final question is around, we've seen reports of abuse and so forth of council staff and councils around the country. Has that something that we've noticed in our frontline staff, given we've got staff going out on inspections and things like that? Has that been a factor in recent times or not?
It can be from time to time. Obviously, most generally, the relationships are good, but obviously we're trying to play a part where people can understand, because I think there's a confusion. Concern, I think, too, that not always the facts are obvious to the public, And so where we can take a role more proactively in providing information about what the facts are, what our obligations are, and this is not the council making this hard on consumers or on citizens, it's actually about what we're being asked to do. The risk being if we were to lose those sorts of accreditation, then the people of Dunedin will then have to go to another council to get that work done. And we know as other councils are currently tracking, we're actually one of the higher performers. Some of them are not even looking at consent applications for 40 working days. So we're, all of that information is, is in context, it looks a little different, but we are doing what we can to improve.
Thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you. Councillor Lord.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I'm just wondering, and I realise these come from the questions we ask, but I look at the one with dog control and it says 59% of people are happy with with roaming dogs, and I sit there and I think, you can't tell me that 41% of the population lie awake worrying about roaming dogs around the city, and I'm just wondering, A, how we ask the question, and B, do you think that's a fair statistic? Because I would suggest that less than 5% of the people would even think about them. So, but I don't. That's not taken. But I just, yeah. Any thoughts?
My understanding is that part of Ms. Wakaire's work is to look at working the strategic refresh and looking at the measures that we do use to look for satisfaction and what's the most appropriate measure in that regard.
Thank you. Councillor Raddick.
Councillor Lord almost took my question, but very similar. I've got two questions, one difficult and one easy. Firstly, the difficult question. Can you explain, following on from Councillor Lord, why dog control is achieving really good control of roaming dogs? So the number of roaming dogs is definitely decreasing, yet satisfaction is getting lower, which is a complete contradiction to me.
No, Councillor, I can't explain that.
Oh, that was easier than it looked. Okay, so the easy question...
I can also tell you that the increase of dog registrations has gone up exponentially as well. People keeping dogs, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, my second question. My second question is a very easy one. And similarly to resource consent applications, could we have an RFI graph for building consent applications?
I've marked that down for both. Yes.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if, with consents, given the pressure on the building sector at the moment, would having more staff help consents, speed them up a bit, do you think? And if that's the case, so two-part question, if that's the case, are you trying to get new staff, and are you finding it difficult to get them?
The answer to that question is yes, we've already done that. We've developed the business case. And that's what I just said. We've gone out. In fact, we're increasing capacity in total by 7 positions. We've onboarded 4 so far, and we're just going out to market for the educational roles.
Thank you. Councillor Elder.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question, and I know you're implementing some of that work to make things easier for people. And I was just wondering what the feedback is so far, say, like on plain English forms, etc., and other work you're doing.
The feedback has been generally, well, I think the results are showing that, in fact, we're getting more people paying their infringements. So we started with parking infringements, and you'll note in the report that our costs have been dropping in terms of us having to enforce those infringements. So obviously there's some ways we can monitor that. But certainly we're finding that response turnaround. But there's measures in all of those. So there's many, many letters. We've got through about 25, and I think there's many, many more to come. But I've got another 20 sitting on my desk.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you. I'll move that we note these 2 reports, seconded by Councillor Walker. Further discussion of any kind? I'll put it. Those in favour, please say aye. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Gary.
Yes, I did. I just wanted to acknowledge the work that has gone into changes, because we do have a problem with perception out in the community, and I am aware that we are in the organisation doing a great deal of work, whether it be plain English, working with the various stakeholder groups and industry people, and trying to understand what their challenges are, educating people to put in complete consent applications, and a whole range of efforts. And then we have the perception of the community. So I want to acknowledge that work that's gone into it, and the education roles are going to be really important in helping people navigate that, and I look forward to a time when the community perceives it slightly differently. Thank you.
Just following that, I'd also like to add our gratitude for staff grappling with some confusing and difficult outcomes, interpretations from figures that might not be as accurate as we would want, or questions that might not be as useful as we would want. And so much and all as this information is valuable, I think it does need to be refined. I'm repeating really the conversation that happened in the previous meeting about eliciting information that can be acted on usefully, without observing the great conundrum that we had recently from the Ros of more roadworks but no traffic cones, you know, which probably says it all. I'll put it. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. That's agreed. That takes us to item 9. Are there any items for consideration by the Chair? There appearing to be none. I'll close the meeting, and in doing so, just say, can we take 5 minutes to get the staff here for the briefing about this building that we're expecting? So that will be in 4 minutes and 55 seconds.